So I finally got to my noir movie, and this is, of course, Wim Wenders' The American Friend. I have wanted to see this movie for a very long time. There's a series of books Wim Wenders wrote about his filmmaking in the 70s and 80s, and I have, I think, volume 2 or volume 3, I can't remember. And I read it, I devoured it when I was in grad school, and it made me want to watch all of his films. I had already seen Wings of Desire and Far Away So Close, um, maybe something else at that point. And then Pina came out, and Pina changed my life. Pina changed my life. If I could live in any movie, it would be Ben Bender's Pina. But then I read, oh, and then I saw Paris, Texas. And then I read this book, and then I was like, blah. And slowly but surely, I've seen most of those 70s films. A lot of them are available from Criterion, the Kings of the Road trilogy, um, etc. One of the ones I hadn't watched was The American Friend, and it's been on Filmstruck for the whole time, and I finally friggin' watched it, and I can't believe I waited so long. It's another one of those ones where I was like, this is fucking amazing, and I'm fucking up not watching it. But thankfully, it's on Criterion and DVD, so I might like pick it up actually as part of the Barnes and Noble sale and just have it forever because it's so amazing. So it's based on Ripley's Game by Patricia Highsmith. There's another version of Ripley's Game starring John Malkovich that came out a little bit later, actually called Ripley's Game. But at this point, Wim Wenders really loved Patricia Highsmith's work, and he had two books in particular he wanted to adapt, both of which he could not get the rights to. He wrote to Highsmith. Highsmith gave him her unfinished manuscript for unpublished manuscript for this and said, "Here, you can have the rights to this." He made the film prior or just as the book was being released. It is shot by Robbie Mueller, who did like all the best films. Paris, Texas, obviously. Tons of Jarmusch, freaking Repo Man. Oh, I love Repo Man. Oh, I need to rewatch that one. That's a good movie. Okay, so it's kind of the background here. The plot. It's another one that's like a little over 2 hours. Makes you think it's gonna be a lot longer than it is. It really isn't. It's swift and great and tense. And Dennis Hopper plays the Tom Ripley character in this case. In the other versions, again, it's Malkovich, Alan Delon in Purple Noon, Matt Damon in Talented Mr. Ripley. Apparently, there's a version with Barry Pepper. I need to see that one too because I love Barry Pepper. He is at this point living in Hamburg and working with an art forger played by the one and only Nicholas Ray with his amazing eye patch. There was a bunch of classic film directors with eye patches, and I swear they are the most badass looking directors there ever was. He's working with him to forge paintings and then sell them up in auction and then cash the money. He meets at one of these auctions a framer played by Bruno Ganz, who obviously made many films with Ben Wenders, including Wings of Desire, um, who is somewhat aware of this scam and sort of slights Ripley. Ripley is a man of, he loves to please people. He loves to know that people are charmed by him, and to be slighted is the worst offense. So he sets up Gans's character to be basically turned into a hitman for a French criminal, played by another director, Gerald Blanc. This happens because they make him think his terminal illness is worse than it is, and he wants to use the money to set up his son and his wife after he dies. What then the rest of the film is him being pulled into this criminal world, killing people and befriending Ripley. Now, the way that this is such a perfect friggin' noir is that it is an ordinary person pulled into extraordinary circumstances. A lot of neo-noirs miss that is such a key factor. Like, think of Detour, where it's just this ordinary dude driving, or DOA, right? Like, there's some of the most tense noirs are where an ordinary person, not a detective, not a criminal, just an ordinary bro gets sucked into something that's beyond him. But what's great and what makes this neo noir not noir is that once this ordinary person ends up in this extraordinary world, his reaction to his own actions are so real that you're like, oh shit. Like he has these emotions he can't deal with because he's murdered somebody. He starts, crying and screaming and all kinds of things both times. And he ends up committing 2 murders. Both times he's so overwhelmed by what he's done that he cannot even function. And the film watches as he falls apart because an ordinary person should not be committing murders. But an ordinary person pushed too far commits a murder. However, Ripley is this sociopath, and he can do it. He's got that switch has been turned off in him, and he's seeing this ordinary person go through this. And in the second part of the film, he's attempting to stop it because he's realized that he shouldn't have sucked this. Just because this guy kind of slighted him a little bit, he shouldn't have sucked him into this horrible world that he's able to function in because he does not have those morals. Um, and then you get Gans's wife, who also sees what he's been sucked into and tries to pull him back out, but by then it's too late. And it's just really tense and wonderful and realistic and so beautifully shot. There's this one sequence where he's like lounging on this mustard colored sort of semicircle lounger in an airport, and it zooms into him. And the way it's shot is just so cool. Just it's one of those shots where you're like, this is cool. And there's all this beautiful use of neon green, which Muller will use again a lot in Repo Man and also in Paris, Texas. That green neon, it's just fucking amazing. So I really liked this. I think it really gets into the psychology of Highsmith and her world, and I think it does some interesting things with noir tropes. I think that it updates them really wonderfully. I think that it is made in this era that is just not quite the 80s, but it's the end of the 70s in that sort of pop era that is just utterly gorgeous. It fits so lovely into Wenders' filmography, in his aesthetic, in his photography. It's all there. Everything you love about him is there. His love of rock and roll. There's Beatles and Kinks and Bob Dylan and all kinds of stuff. And there was a moment where I think it's Hopper's character has one of those like ribbed tubes that you let you spin and they make like crazy noises. I used to have one when I was a kid, and I was like, wait, what? What is he doing with one of those? And just seeing Nicholas Ray be so menacing. God, I loved it. I loved every minute of this movie. It's fabulous. You should 100% watch it. You will love it. It is great. This is technical and emotional filmmaking combined to make something truly extraordinary. This is the kind of shit I dig. So this is The American Friend. It's by Wim Wenders. If you've never watched a Wim Wenders movie, like, first of all, stop everything and just consume as many as you can, because he is one of the great filmmakers. He's one of my all-time favorite filmmakers, and I'm so glad I finally saw this movie. I wish some of his earlier 70s films were available. Everything before the Road trilogy is like unavailable in America, and I'm like, give me these movies. But I'm missing some of his later ones too, so I need to catch up on those. But every single film I've seen by him, I have loved. So he always knocks it out of the park for me. So this is The American Friend. It's on Criterion Channel right now. You can get it on DVD, Blu-ray from Criterion. I think you can rent on Amazon. It's widely available. It's fucking amazing and a good way to sort of close out your last week of Noirvember 110%.